First of all, a very, very warm welcome to you, Subhasis, um, to this session. We are delighted that you accepted our invitation. And Kanchi, something that you might not know, Subhasis and I, we are batchmates from IIT Kharagpur. So we go a long way. This is a session on reinventing tech education. So the way we want to run this session is, first, I would like to invite Professor Chaudhuri. So hard for me to say that. It's Subhasis for me all the time. Invite him to first, sort of Subhasis, just lay out your thoughts about reinventing tech education. What do we mean by this? What we are thinking when we say this, or what does the world, think when they say that? A general outline, your thoughts on this subject for maybe 15 minutes, and then I would like to ask you some questions after that, and we can have a chat, and then we can open it up for the audience to ask some questions. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Great.
So thank you, Professor Pratap. I think, first of all, I find it's a great honor to be invited to this August, program, okay, particularly, and also congratulations to you for being the founding director or the Vice Chancellor of Plaksha University, something we all expectantly look forward to being the, to the spearhead of all our experimental experiments on new education system. So first of all, best wishes to that and all the students and all the listeners here. It's an interesting thing that the title, first thing is that I try to look at the actual English meaning of the three words that you put in: reinventing, tech, education. So I try to contextualize that in terms of my own personal being, how do I fit into that particular discussion? So when you talk about education, yes, I am in the, business of education, if you may call it, okay. And my father was a school teacher. So yes, it's probably in my gene too, okay. So yes, maybe I'll be able to comment a few things on that. The tech, second part is technology. So which is, again, I am in this particular profession where I'm an engineer, trained engineer, and we are producing engineers. So yes, but the first word, the reinventing, is something interesting, because when you normally say that, what could be a meaning of reinventing? One is, of course, when we say reinventing the wheel, actually it means bad thing, right? Because things are already done and you are redoing it, which is actually wastage of it. Okay. So that's definitely not the word we are going to use it for. Okay. The other, I think the Oxford English meaning would be something like, which is more of, it is somehow adjusting or reshaping the way we do things to make sure that, we bring in certain thing which is more relevant for today. And if that's the one, then I think it's very appropriate. And I think that's what you mean, right? Now, when you put this one, now, of course, the first question could have been, again, let's do all possible combination of the word, reinventing education as opposed to reinventing tech education. So the fact that we have let's wait for a minute to this subside. I think the sound probably. Yeah. So if you look at the reinventing education versus reinventing tech education, right? So that means you are asking for a very specific form of education, which is technology education, right? And if you look at today, like the way it is happening, the progress of technology is too fast, okay? Whereas if you look at certain other cases, okay, where things may be a bit slow, because this is what in physics or certain other cases, we call it the scale. the scale at which things are changing. So in a technology domain, things change too fast. Okay. And if that happens, then one is like doing it with the same thing to be actually part of the curriculum. And the second aspect that we actually have, sorry, there is something going on outside my window. Okay, that's the defogging. Okay, I think it's gone. The second aspect is that, so one is, of course, how to keep pace with the changing world, particularly technology is moving so fast. And the second aspect could be that using such technology back into the education system. So basically, you produce certain technology, which itself is useful. So there is a feedback loop and try to do that. Okay. So maybe I can take that as a context to see that how we can discuss and have this discussion with Professor Rudra Pratap in terms of where we are heading. Okay. Now, if you really look into the education as such, it has something which is probably more relevant for tech education. Okay. One complaint we keep getting is that it's a linear form of education. Okay. Now, when you mean by linear, you go through a sequence. You start with primary, secondary, tertiary. Then you go into your undergraduate, postgraduate, PhD, whatever you call it, right? And it's like you keep going on that process, right? Now, somebody said that's not correct. Okay. Now, the thing is, what's wrong with that? That's also is a possibility. If you look at education as a process, it's probably one of the oldest profession or the process that we human beings are actually engaged in. The moment we had a definition of civilization, right? It started, we are being civil, starting from, the Gurukul to Aristotle, Plato, whatever no matter which culture you take it, okay. Education has been part of it, okay. And it has gone through a long process and so many things has happened. So why we are saying that the way the education that we have gone through, over years and years or maybe, millennia, what's wrong with that? Okay, so what's wrong with being such a linear? Okay. The second aspect, that is the scale. See what happened in earlier days. The number of people who are actually, it's a part of the education system, be it in Gurukula, it's a very minuscule part of our society. Today, we're talking about a society where we want everybody to be educated. We want our gross enrollment ratio today in higher education is something like less than 25%, it's something like 23%. And the national education policy, they're trying to say it's around 50% in another 5 or 6 years or something like that. Okay. Now, of course, it requires a large amount of resource. Okay. And during the process, we realize that actually education is a part of a vibrant economy. Okay. What I mean by that is that if you look at today, currently, what part of our population are engaged professionally, in the education business is something like at least 3% of our workforce, okay, which is quite significant, right? So that means it's actually giving back to the society in terms of not only a job prospect, but it includes even people like booksellers and everything, all of them, right? So when you do that, now the question is, what is the cost of education? Okay. Now this is another aspect that we must look at when you talk about education, okay, and particularly in the tech education. The question is that, sometime in India and other places, we simply say that it's a state responsibility. And sometime we say that, okay, the cost that, why should it cost so much for education? But that's not actually the good question to ask, because if you look at in any of these, let's say American and other universities where you pay as per the actual cost, it's quite significant. For an undergraduate program, per yearly is a charge is about $50,000. So if you look at a purchase parity, PPP, okay, it's definitely what we pay in India is nothing compared to that. Okay. On the other hand, we expect the same form of education. And we always say that education was the cheapest thing we always had in India. No, you go back to the Gurukul again. Okay. So you have to be with your guru. You actually work in the guru's house. It's the farming, cultivation, everything. So you actually, whatever is your product produce, actually that you give that to your guru, so that you make a list, you stay there, your living cost, as well as, like, in today's time we call lodging and boarding, plus your education together. So it's a significant amount of payment. We were doing like a barter system, but actually it cost. Now, somewhere in the process, that, let's say in IIT in general, if we, of course, the cost varies whether it's an undergraduate or a, let's say PhD program. So this cost is also quite, so on average, it's around 9 lakh rupees per student. Okay. But the students pay very little, particularly the undergraduates, and also at the graduate level, almost, because we pay for the stipend. So who bears the cost? Because finally, when you do research and others, the same set of equipment cost is same whether you buy it in India or outside. Okay, so you should look into it, right? But that's more on the, in the business of being there. But if you look at the education per se, now normally all over the world, the education had been a top-down approach, where we professors, or those who decide, that what should be the part of the curriculum. So we decide what should be taught, okay? And then and as a matter of fact, that in some sense is true, because I can teach you what I know. I cannot teach you what I don't know, right? Because you may be asking things like, I want to study this, whereas I may not know that. But on the other hand, today also we're talking about the student first. So that means it should be a bottom-up approach. The students demand that this is what I want to know. And that brings into that particular, the linearity that I talk about, okay? That your journey through the education system, that when we cook up your system, we try to do a linearized process. But your demand could be very different. You can suddenly go like a random access if you're looking at computer science. So I say, I want to study this, I want to do this particular thing. Now, of course, which is good at some point, because that's what you want. Maybe that's what you like, okay? But at the same time, when you want to decide that this is what I precisely want to know, in order to be able to do that, you must be at a place, you must open up the window to see this is precisely what is the opportunity in front of me. So this is a chicken and egg problem, right? And that's why typically the education system, traditionally has been like that, okay? Now we are trying to provide all these kind of possibilities that is possible. Now, when you make it as specific to technology, now the question is that technology is very, very, moving at a very fast pace. And sometimes people confuse technology with respect to the information, right? See, tell you that something like we call ourselves as an information society. Anything I want, like encyclopedia and others, I simply do Google or something, whatever is your favorite engine, okay? Now, it is told that, since the birth of Jesus Christ to 1750, whatever the kind of information that was generated, okay, the same thing was doubled up, okay, in the next 200 years. And the same amount, so it's basically, instead of half life, if you call it a double life, like how long it takes to make the information double. So then 200 years, then the next time, so it's 1950, it became 200. So that means in 50 years, okay? And that's how it is moving, okay? And it is anticipated by the time that we are in 2035, okay, your doubling rate of information is going to be only 6 months. That means by the time I submit a paper and it comes out of a journal or whatever conference, its value is less than half. Okay, so so that's how it's moving very fast. But of course, you should not confuse information with knowledge. Okay, because there is a difference. Okay, into that. But the fact is that the information gets generated sometimes, which is also proportional to the knowledge pool that overall happens, right? So if that happens, how do we fit that and how do we keep pace with that? Of course, in IITs and many other good places, what has happened is that we try to make, in let's say even IISc, Pratap was there, we try to keep on revising the syllabus every time in the Senate. We said, this is required, this is a new thing. We try to hire faculty. But look at what has happened in India since, I think, the independence. We have now, almost nearing 1,000 such universities. It has happened almost in the span of 75 years. Okay. So we are producing like almost one every week. Okay. One university. But what are they doing? Finally, there is something called UGC which actually we put in everything, try to map it into the same linear fashion that we talked about, because there is a straight jacketing of our education system. And the reason for that is that because we do not want to do the experiment, because at the same time, when the students that graduate, where do they get a job? Okay. See, I tell you the problem. Let's say, supposing I allow one of your students to say that, which we are trying to experiment at IIT Bombay, that, we are setting up something called Center for Liberal Education. So you come and you take whatever courses you want, okay, in engineering. And it will include like some music, you could do something in this, but as long as you complete the credit requirement, you get your degree, okay? Now the question is that when this guy goes out, now what kind of job opportunities and others, okay, is the now most of the government jobs, be it PSU and others, it will not be there because the person didn't get a degree in electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. They would be asking, what's your specialization? What did you learn? Okay. But that's where we wanted to say that, okay, but good thing is that even though these people do not have this opportunity to get into that, but fortunately now there's tremendous opportunity in the private space where there are a lot of companies, they don't actually care whether you are an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer. As long as you fit into their demand of the job, they will be happy to take you. So that's the advantage of a technical education where there is a large private industry available. And that's why there is a tremendous scope for all of us is to do this experiment, okay? Because now what happens is that when you put the students in this linear cycle, okay, that you go through this, some of them lose the steam, okay? And then what is, oh, I am no longer interested in learning thermodynamics or something, or maybe I don't want to learn electromagnetism, whatever it is. Okay, what does it get me? Okay, it's good. I mean, some Maxwell did something, so many years ago, and I'm still troubled by that. No, so, okay, there is something else you may be good at. Okay, do that, okay? So these are the things that actually make your, the whole issue that education that you are going to give you in the technical space. Finally, this, the university doesn't prepare a student for only to get a job for tomorrow. Because you spend 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, depending on what you are doing in the university. But your actually lifetime in a company or wherever in the productive space, thing in your life is about 40 years, right? So whatever you learn in this 3 to 10 years or 4 years, right? That should actually, you should be able to encash it and build on the top of this for the next 40 years. Otherwise, you will be obsolete, right? That's the thing I said, that you keep generating so much of thing in this one. So there is a space also that is a lifelong learning, right? So now you cannot avoid that, no matter what you do, okay? So these issues would be there, and this is more relevant in the technical, education, right? So now, before I stop for, my friend to ask me, specific questions, now let's go to the first word, that is the reinventing. So what is this reinvention that actually we could do, right? So in some sense, of course, because we are talking about technical education, right? Now you have to understand one thing, is that tomorrow, when we try to do it, let's say when you generate, okay, more manpower, okay, you have to provide a job, Okay. And the way it is today, there is also a complaint that we have a growth without a job creation because there are a lot of automation, other thing happens. So when you create something like, let's say, when you produce a lot more PhD students, because we are, or rather, let's say undergraduates, whatever it is, okay, we are talking about getting the gross enrollment ratio to double, okay. Where are the opportunities, right? So the way it has to happen is that our students, as you grow, okay, you have to bring in the entrepreneurship and that kind of thing in you, so that tomorrow that this is something that I need to do it, okay, and that's where your innovations, your skill as an entrepreneur, those are the things that's actually becoming more important. So traditionally we say that, look, it's a skill, entrepreneurship you learn from home, because I have seen maybe my father was having this company and also I learned as a kid and things like this, right? So it's like slow process. Of course, that's one process. But now you never been into any kind of business. Suddenly you say, yes, I have to create that. So universities and all these places, particularly in the tech education, places like incubators, others, okay, and also, this is essential now. Okay, you have to do it because that's where actually you find your graduates to go and actually make a good living. They create jobs for people, right? See, you are in a good place like Plaksha. We have people who are like fortunate to be in IIT, but that's not so much. India is very, very resource starved, so we have to create opportunities for them, right? So this would be the invention that you take. It has to be there. And when you want to get into that, there are certain other requirements. The requirements that happens is that when you need to set up a product, which you have to, so it's as an entrepreneur, finally you will be selling a product or a service. Okay. It turning out in India, the service is a lot easier because if whether different kind of services that our people produce, they grow very fast, and there is a guaranteed return that you see many of the companies that they do. And there is a tendency, but there is a deep tech, because see, the services also will keep on changing because on the technology what you produce, right? So ideally we should invest more on the deep tech, okay, and that's where we need people. And today's deep tech is so deep that one person may not be knowing all this. So earlier, when we were learning something as an individual, the individual is not so much important as far as the product is concerned that you want to generate. So you have to bring in more people, so group. So learning in a group, because I may know one part of the product, there is another person who needs all of them, right? And somebody is good in the business, how to sell things, right? You can produce soap, but somebody has to sell the soap, right? So you need to create an ecosystem where you form a partnership with people from all these different people who can actually see a table has 4 legs. And unless you have all the 4 stable, it's not a table anymore. You cannot sit on this, or you cannot do dining. So you need to those people. These are your partners. So our education system should actually bring that partnership among the students so that tomorrow they can be in a group and together they can actually go to the thing and say, okay, this is where the collective education we got as a group, and this is how we produce, and that gets back to our system.
Thank you. Thank you. That was fantastic. You started from the Gurukul and connected that with linear learning that has come to be, the mainstay of education, and then how, top down and bottom up education, the tension that is being created between the two, how that is leading us to think differently, and what technology or pace of technology, the way it is changing, at the rate it is changing, how it is forcing us to think differently. This is a lot of stuff you covered in this short time, Subhasis. So let me just get back to this word, reinventing, that you so nicely defined, that it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's reinventing education. When we are talking about, we are talking about reimagining in a different way. Now, we have started hearing about this off late quite a bit, and you always think that is it because we all got shunted into our homes, and we were forced to do online classes because of the pandemic, and then all of a sudden, the usual way we imparted education, that did not carry through in this process. Although, I mean, online classes have been going on for a while now, right? All the MOOCs and stuff like that. So you clearly pointed out that the problem is deeper. It's not about just this. It's not just to do with what pandemic has done, but the problem is deeper. And you pointed out, you gave some really good pointers that, look, what do universities do? They don't prepare you just for the next job that you can get, but they give you a foundation for lifelong learning. So, taking a cue from there, how are IITs, changing? Because IITs are going to be watched very carefully, right? Very, very carefully, because we have, a whole tradition of that education that you talked about, and we are at the forefront in IITs in education, tech education, and you are challenged now that you need to change. So you gave just one example, liberal education at IIT Bombay. IIT system as a whole, how do you think it is moving to address the challenges of reinventing education?
Okay, so I tell you, there are two aspects. Okay, let's first, avoid this pandemic related thing we are at our home, so that I can come to that later.
Okay? Right, yeah.
But let's assume that we don't have it. It's a normal time. Okay. Now, look at what's happening in India, as with the overall in the education sector, particularly the tech sector. Okay. Normally, you have something that as an undergraduate, then the masters and the PhD students, right? Okay. And there are these students who have to be brought into the concept that, see, look, like earlier days, let's say if you look at the education, how it was brought in during the British time, that you go to a certain set of, like a program, and all you become is a clerk in British Empire, and that's what was needed for them. Okay. But thankfully, the Indians that time, they went beyond that. Okay. And we had a lot of other benefit that started accruing. Okay. So it's not that finally we put you into the market, either in that our graduates, that you go and find a job. Okay. Or, maybe go for higher education, and someday, like me, you become a professor here. Okay. These are the normal two things, right? So can there be anything beyond that? Okay. So the way to do it is actually, what impact you make in basically the common person's life. So if you, since you raised the question with respect to IIT, let me put it like, so when, so first, I would say around 30 years or so, all these older IITs, let's take them. Okay. I would call it, this is like IIT 1.0. Okay. And what does it mean? That when we had this independence, and maybe soon after, we didn't have like what you call that, enough number of engineers to even man things, to create something, to fill up positions. Simply, there are not enough, university or the colleges, engineering colleges, there are very few. Okay. So we needed to create the bottom of the pyramid. So a lot of emphasis has gone into creating the bottom of the pyramid by providing excellent tech education, right? Then after 30 years or so, of this thing, so next 30 years, I call it IIT 2.0. Okay, what does it mean? So now you said, okay, we have created a lot of them, and many of them have gone out, they've done very well, or, they've gone to the job, they have created certain, but let's go for a higher education. So more for research, like master's, PhD, and then the research level. So you create that kind of thing so that these people also start getting into, you have many private engineering colleges and others by the time it started, there. So next 30 years was more, the emphasis will be on the research and all. So that's what we did. And of course, the emphasis on 1.0 continues. Okay, that's always been there. Okay. Then what's next? The next now. So we are right now, I would what we call it IIT 3.0. Okay. What does it mean? That a lot of research, when you get it done, okay, where does it finally end up being? Okay, of course, there are papers we write, which gets us as a faculty member, as a researcher, this is our recognition by the outside. You read out my biodata and says, okay, I got these awards. Pratap, you have got so many awards, okay, as well as patents and others. But what's happening beyond that? Nothing. Okay. So the question is that, can we now make more as a translational research? Okay. So when you do the translation, now it's not so easy. See, if I'm a professor and I have a student, somebody joins, okay, let's say A has to go on, he's like, develop something idea, the prototype does it. And at the end of it, I have to let the person go. Okay. It could be master student, it could be BTP student, BTech student. Now, so you have developed some idea, but it has not matured. So what we call the TRL level is low. Okay. So if the TRL level is high, of course, then myself or my student or some other people, they can either license it or they can actually take it to the incubator. And IIT Bombay runs the, India's first incubator, okay, which, has graduated large number of companies, and some of the companies today are valued at $2.5 billion overall. Okay. So, but many of them fell through. Okay. So can you have a TRL booster? Okay. So we need to create that kind of ambience where there are again 4 pillars. You need an incubator. You need a training in incubation. Okay. So we have a school of entrepreneurship. Similarly, I think otherwise there has to be some way of doing it. Then the third thing that we are trying to do is as a research park. So that means you bring industry next to you so that you have the industry has one foot right in this so that you can always collaborate with them. And the fourth one is that anything that falls through the gap or the TRL booster should be the one that we should take. So this is the 3.0. Now the question is that as we move, so we cannot wait for 30 years. You look at MIT, okay, they have their excellent set of education that they provide. Okay, there's a lot of top research, but also next thing that comes is a social impact. So I would say that IIT 4.0, whenever that happens, 10 years, 15 years, okay, that should be on how to make social impact. There are many problems in our society where actually our people can solve those rather than saying, okay, of course, I need 5G to 6G, everything that is required. I need the hypersonic transport, whatever it is. All those things are required. But also, I have to see the person outside my building, how to make their life. So it's the impact. So I would put IIT to your question. Pre-pandemic, forget about the pandemic. I think that's where it should be, and where we are trying. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
Fantastic. That was really nice. Very nice. This IIT 1.0, 1.2, and 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. We were products of 2.0.
Yes.
Both you and I were products of 2.0. So, you laid out this entire thing about making social impact and also translational research, which has been our problem in India, translational research. If we compare with the West, it always gets compared, right? IITs are always compared with MIT or whatever, at different levels. Translational research has also to do with ecosystem, isn't it? In the Western world, we see a really good ecosystem for it. But I find that in India, we don't quite have that ecosystem. You talked about, getting industry connected for TRL boost, right? there are very few industries in India that can take something which is a TRL 3, 4 and run with it. And there are dime a dozen companies in USA, right, which do that, which can do that. And that has been the case for a long time. So this gap that we have, how do we bridge that gap? Translational research is the holy grail for us. There is no doubt. I 100% agree with you. But what kind of students can we produce, or how can we change our education so that we are able to do this? What you have set out as an agenda.
So this is definitely a difficult question. There are two things. It's not everything in the hand of the university or IIT or wherever this place, okay? Because finally, this has to exist in the society, and society is to be done by the governance and other things in the, what kind of things that they do. Let's say, supposing if you set up a company requires 101 license and other thing, definitely nobody would try to venture out because it's very, very difficult because there are a lot of barriers rather than facilities. Okay. Thankfully, this is changing. See, if you look at it, why it has happened, you have to go back to something, I would say around 1930s or so, when Stanford set up, around that, the whole area of Silicon Valley and others. See, they catapulted the everything. And when you compare it, you have to look at what kind of facilities were provided. They were given everything on a platter. You do what you want to do. Even today, anybody who wants to set up something, there's a lot of kind of, I think, enabling things that are given to these people. So that keeps them going, okay? So this understanding has come to us also. I think our government and others, they are trying to do it, okay? But at the same time, we have to prepare the people to make advantage of this, what's happening. And gradually they would demand more and things would gradually improve. It's a slow process. It will not happen in this thing. But I could give you an example. Once I had two students, okay, who were like second year student, okay, undergraduate. They asked me that we want 2 years, kind of a leave from IIT, okay, to set up our own company, okay. And we are not being permitted because our academic office says only if you are sick or something like that, then you are allowed to withdraw. Otherwise, you will not give you anything. So since they were refused, they came to me as a director. I said, then I tried to understand what they're doing. Then I said, look, if you have to do it and if you have an idea and if you think this is a good idea, you should jump on it, okay? And if you are successful, most likely you will never come back to it, right. Okay, because there is no need for you.
Right.
But if you are not successful, okay, then you should come back as a more enlightened, I think, person in terms of how to do the next thing better. So I'll give you, I'll take this thing as a special case. I'll give you leave. But since you are too young, you are 18, 19-year-old, right? I want your permission from you to get from parents. And I tell you, they have not come back to us yet. Okay. So so you have to give them. See, also what we do is that, campus placement is very important for these kids. Okay. So we say that if you want to explore on your own, we can give you a deferred campus placement opportunity. So you can come back, supposing you fail. Okay.
Right.
So that, see, you have to give them the risk. And I must tell you today, it's not, the students are also quite ambitious. They know the aspirations and they're quite smart. And many of them actually take it up as a challenge. And, we are listening to them. We are trying to open up as much of opportunities for them, whatever is possible under our, hat, I would say.
Very good. See, audience is listening to everything that we're talking about, and there are questions coming already. I thought I would ask you a couple of more questions and then go to the audience. So I'm just going to ask them to have a little bit of patience because, I'm so excited to hear your views, Subhasis, about these things. So you have pointed out, really, really good things. And one of the things you said is about, flexibility, right? Those students came to you because, maybe the academic office told them that, no, you can't take off, right? we need flexibility. Today's world requires a lot of flexibility. And that's where, new universities like, my university, Plaksha University, for example, is coming in. These universities uh, do not have the kind of, rules and regulations. You know, Publicly funded education institutions have to have, right? Of course, there is certain imperative which is required and it has to be there. So how do you see the role of these new universities which are coming up, aspirational universities like Praksha? How do you see their role in reinventing tech education in India?
I think it's one of the greatest thing that has happened to India, to frankly speaking, that we need this. Okay. See, what's happening is that we are not experimenting. Okay. Let's say, as you just clearly mentioned, that even though we try to keep adapting, okay, but we cannot do a large scale experimentation. Okay. Because of, the nature of IIT, it's also inertia. And also we have people on this thing. It's a big place now. It's more than 13,000 students. Okay. As well as there are many government regulations, okay, things like this. So there are certain things we cannot do. But you, as a Plaksha, as a new thing, okay, they can do a lot of nice experiments. And I think they should do it. The reason is that you get excellent students. Okay. The students are aspirational. Okay. Give them the opportunity and they will create and they will blossom. See, as an individual, I want 1,000 flowers to blossom, and you have to give them the opportunity, right? So the moment you go through any of these, let's say our so-called the university, the colleges, technical colleges and others, there's so much of restriction. You have to do this, your exams is going to be like this. So you should, as a Plaksha, you should try experimenting in all disciplines, okay? Be it in the exam system, be it on the delivery system of the education, okay? Be in the learning process, how you do it, okay? And of course, people have been working, whether it's a MOOCs, blended, all kind of blah, blah, they are all, people have been doing it, but that is not like a large scale experimentation in terms of what it is. And being a technical university, see, you also have like, we want like, for example, Ashoka is a very good university, but this is predominantly so far more on the non-technical side. I think they are also starting that, okay? And what's happening there is that for us, one of the key important thing in technical education is a laboratory, okay? Because, all that the students should be doing things by hand, unless they do it, just by, solving equations and others, it doesn't give them the thing. So they need to have. So what I would say that you should have also like something, what we call like a tinkerer's lab or a, maker space or something, which is available to the student 24/7. Let them have their eureka moment any time of the day. And they say, okay, this is the time I go back to this lab and let me try it out. Give them the thing. So there could be several courses which need not be fixed. You could simply say, look, you do something, your self-guided study or, supervised study and others. So throw them open the opportunities. And I'm sure that since it has not happened in India, okay, these students will, jump for it, okay? And they will do it. Of course, you have to maintain the quality. You have to have a proper evaluation process so that, because tomorrow Plaksha has to be in the, top grade university and others. That's where should be the destination for all. But I think it's a right thing. And I think if you want me, you have my full support. This is an excellent thing. And I think all of us, particularly who love the, technical education, would strongly support your endeavor in terms of seeing that new experiments, okay, of course, one or two would fail and automatically, you will remove them. So new things will keep coming, okay? So absolutely do it. This is the right thing, okay? Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. So Subhasis, I must inform you that because you talked about it, we are building a really large makerspace and it's almost ready. I'll invite you to see this makerspace. It's beautiful. I wish we had something like that. It's 24/7 open for students to have Eureka moment at any time they want, as you said. That ties in very well with one of the questions we have got from Varun Agrawal. who is in the audience, says, does the curriculum, or for that matter, pedagogy or curriculum, does it really even matter? Because, information is readily available. So why not have students just involved in research, and, do cutting edge research, let students be involved in that, and they learn as they go along. In research, they will be asking questions, they will come across things that they have to do and they don't have skills for, then they learn the appropriate skills. What's wrong in going that way? And why worry about even curriculum and pedagogy and all this?
Okay, so maybe I can take the, one of the very nice statement that probably one of the greatest scientists has said, okay, something like Einstein, right? That I excelled because I stood on the shoulder of the giants, right? Because, see, you have to understand any knowledge, okay, creation or others is always incremental in nature. There very rarely you have suddenly completely different. It builds on the one and the brick by brick. So you can always start doing it. You should be innovative. You should start thinking of it. Okay, but unless you have a fundamental preparation, what happens when you try to do it? And at some point, if you don't have some minimum background prepared, you will be hunting in the darkness. Okay, because you have not prepared yourself. So what happened? You will come back to this. Oh, I don't know, maybe this is what, but maybe if you had had some proper training, okay, then you can actually do a lot better in some sense. So, it should be, for example, forget about science, okay. So many of you, I don't know, many of you are born after Kishore Kumar died, probably, I think, right? So we were at a time when, we loved Kishore Kumar. He never had a proper training, okay, but he was a fantastic singer. But they were very rare but if you look at rest of them, they had a proper training. Okay. So yes, it is in some cases, it is possible that without doing a proper training, somebody can, like a Kishore Kumar, can come out. But in general, there is a process, there's a training, which actually helps you to guide to reach, if you look at Manna De, Muhammad Rafi, and all of them, they actually grinded through a lot of training. And that's, see, they are also equally as good. And we remember them even today. They are gone long time ago, right?
Right. A very, very nice analogy indeed. And Manna did, till the end, he kept saying that Kishore would have been a very good singer if he had gotten trained. Oh, God. Yes. So we are at the end of this session, Subhasis. I would, there are lots of students in our audience too. So if you were to do crystal gazing, and if you were to give them three pieces of advice for their careers, for their education, what would that be? This should be the last thing that we do right now. What will that be?
Okay, it's a difficult question because see what happened. It depends on the individual perception also, because it's always you perceptualize your own understanding, and sometimes you try to put on somebody else, which may not be always correct. Okay, so but let me try still from my perspective what I think is probably good. Okay, and it's a fairly decent one, I would say. Okay, see, first of all, your aspirations should be high. Okay, which most of our today's young generation, if they are. Okay, so let the aspirations fly as high as possible, limitless. Okay, no issue, but with one thing. Okay, your fit should be strongly grounded. Okay, the reason I say is that, okay, that what happened is that, when you try something, and sometimes there will be failures and others, and it hits you hard. Okay, because all of you are very good students, you have never seen failure in your life. And when you try for entrepreneurship, you try for something very difficult problem. See, otherwise you will end up doing small problems, solve bigger problems. So there will be a lot more failures. But if your fit is strongly on ground, you know that yes, there is a possibility. So there will not be any setback. Okay, that's number one. Okay. Number two is, because this is more of a technical education. Okay. Personally, I feel, and even I try to tell my kid and other, okay, that, of course, we should be thinking people. We should be exploring different things. We should be, rational in our, understanding or decision process, because we try to think and try to do that. Okay. But more than that, what is also important, you keep your eyes open. And when I say that keep your eyes open, I mean, like, you should have a strong observational power. Okay. When you observe something, and this observation could be, eye is one aspect, it could be many other in general. Okay. Because as an engineer, okay, when you have to solve complex problems, okay, looking for where things go wrong, if you have a current system, okay, then actually that helps. Okay. So you have to see all possible ways. See, nowadays what happens, you may say that, I don't need my eyes because there are so many IoT devices, IoE devices. I'll keep on sensing them to all this. That's perfectly fine. But what I mean is that you should look for all these signals so that you can actually a better problem solver tomorrow. Okay. And the third one, which is again for engineers. Okay. Now, what's the difference between engineers and a scientist? Okay. So I am not a scientist. I'm an engineer first. Okay. And what is, we engineers try to take the science and try to use it for our benefit, for the human, and we try to do it. And when you try to do that, you realize that there is nothing like a perfection in this case. In any engineering discipline, there would be a lot of constraints. Okay. Things cannot, anything you do measurement, there will be noise. Okay. A typical science will not say, okay, let's not worry about that. Let's solve Charles' law, Boyle's law, I'll solve, okay, Newton's law, whatever it is. Okay. But in any engineering problem, it's understanding the constraints. There would be opportunities, because sometimes if you look at right assumption, right things, if you try to do it, okay, that's how we solve problems. Okay. So understanding the limitations and the opportunities will make you a very good engineer in your life. Okay. And then maybe you'll be a lot more successful in no matter what you do. Okay.
Fantastic. Fantastic. With those words, keep your eyes open, your feet grounded, understand limitations and opportunities, and forge ahead with very high aspiration. Beautiful words to sum it up. Thank you, Subhasis, so much for this
so much.
Wonderful session. We have come to an end of the session. There are lots of questions in the chat box. Subhasis, you can just gaze through those. And, if you find any of those questions interesting, you can answer them.